All Blacks against Pumas, folks. Game number 2 from Eden Park. Rugby Championship second week gets underway this weekend. Chance for redemption for the All Blacks after a pretty disappointing first week down in Wellington. Their record in Wellington continues to be poor. And for the Pumas, it is a chance to go back-to-back over the All Blacks and to break the All Blacks' undefeated run, which stretches at Eden Park back to 1994. Albeit with a couple of draws in the way. But yeah, we'll go through the squads, we'll go through some stats, predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. The All Blacks have made a few changes. One of them is injury enforced, with Ethan de Groot having a neck issue. It means Tamaiti Williams is chucked in there in the number 1 jersey, and he'll be looking to get some scrummaging action going before the kind of hour mark like we saw in game number 1. Cody Taylor and Tyrell Lomax continue on as the kind of other 2 front rowers. With Tamaiti Williams, you certainly get a lot of unit because he is a very, very large prop. It'll be interesting to see how many kind of minutes he gets through, but we know he can go pretty deep into games from previous games where he's played. Tupavati and Sam Derry continue on in the second row. Derry, I thought, was one of the kind of few bright spots on what was a pretty disappointing, as I said, outing from the All Blacks last week. And then my old man thought there was going to be kind of changes, particularly in this area, that being the back row. But it's consistent with Blackadder, Papali'i, and Savia. So it's another chance for these guys to show us that they can be right up there with some of the other top back rows in the world. Because certainly last week, there was a lot more to shout about with the way the Pumas guys performed at the breakdown on defensive shifts. Like even Pablo Matera just with like 20-odd carries. Crazy stuff from the Pumas captain. TJ Perenara, D-Mac continue on 9-10, so no changes in that department. TJ's getting a little bit of flack for his, getting charged down a couple of times with those box kicks. Will need to be, either more well protected or need to be quicker on the kind of draw with those box kicks. And then Jordy Barrett and Rico Ioane sees one shift in the midfield because Rico was on the bench for last week. He's promoted this time. Wasn't that long ago he was kind of dropped with a kind of little bit of a focus potentially on his passing game. Geordie maybe also didn't have his kind of finest outing last week in All Blacks colours. Not as effective on the carry as he would like to be as well. But if he can find some form and get Rico into some space, the All Blacks could get some pay in the midfield. Caleb Clark is going to bring some power on the left wing. He replaces Mark Talea, who drops to the bench. And Will Jordan is certainly going to add some elusive speed. He got about 30-odd minutes in last week's game, replacing Sevu Reece. So he's in the starting lineup at wing rather than fullback, which is kind of where Fozzie used to play him. But it was speculated under Razor that Will would see some time in the 15 jumper. Not this week because it is still Bodie who continues on in that spot. And Razor did kind of say that he's been playing some good footy. So that's why he kind of retains that spot. Bench-wise, Amor, Tuangafasi, and Newell. That is the same from last week. Joshua Lord continues on as the lock replacement. And then Sam Cane, his addition to the squad is going to bring some experience. Like you noticed that last week when the Pumas guys were able to clear the bench, you had the likes of, Thomas Lavanini. You had Augustine Creevy coming on, some proper veterans. The All Blacks were able to bring on like Wallace Satiti, who's in his second cap, and they played him at number 6. They shifted Blackadder to 7 and Savia stayed at 8, where Satiti largely plays number 8. So second test and semi kind of out of position. You can kind of make an argument for how much of an impact that makes on the guys, what position they're playing. But yeah, Sam Cane being on the bench, if they decide to sub Papali'i like they did last time, it's a stretch swap for number 7. It is a hard tackling, experienced number 7 to bring off the bench. I felt a bit sorry for him because he had to do the press conference stuff after Razor with the team selection. They kept asking him about last week's loss. He didn't even play. It was like last year when All Blacks would lose and Sam Cane would get grilled. He was getting grilled again. He wasn't even in the team last week. Ratima, ALB, and Talea are the 3 back replacements. So Ratima continues to ride the pine, and ALB and Mark Talea drop to the bench for this one. Still no Scotty Barrett. Paddy Tuipulotu, these guys are still injured. Peter Feta likewise, and Luke Jacobson is still apparently about a week away. So that is the All Blacks lineup. A few changes, but not anything kind of wholesale. You would expect Rico to maybe have among the most pressure on him because he's being given another chance after being out of favour with ALB swapping places with him. Well, they've swapped back, so we'll see if Rico is able to do much with the ball that he gets. For the Pumas, they are bolstered by the return of Julian Montoya. The captain is back and he starts at hooker, but that does mean, starting hooker, there's no spot for Krevy in this week's lineup because it means Ignacio Ruiz, who started last week, he drops to the bench. So disappointing for Krevy because he was one of the highlights of last week's game, comes off the bench, gets a try, gets a turnover, kind of key man in seeing out that game for the Pumas boys. But with the return of Montoya, you're certainly getting a heck of a campaigner who's been, the guy who plays 60, 70 minutes for the Pumas week in, week out. Same gets those turnovers, gets heaps of tackles. Gajo and Sordoni are alongside him in the front row. Sordoni also comes into the 23. He replaces Bejo as the starting tight head. Crema shifts to the second row this week, replacing Molina. So it's a kind of slightly more physical looking second row with Crema and Rubiolo there. And then you've got Lavanini on the bench as well, alongside Molina. So they're continuing with this two locks on the bench thing. But with Crema, you can always shift him into the back row if needs be. Matera, Juan Martin Gonzalez, and Joaquin Oviedo round out the back row. So Gonzalez switches from 8 to 7. And then Oviedo's jumped up from the bench. Remember, in July, Oviedo was the main guy playing 8 for the Pumas. So he's certainly been there and done that in recent times under Contepomi. Bertrano and Santiago Carreras, 9-10. Santiago Carreras maybe answered a few of those doubters. I know he has quite a lot of them in Argentina about his role at 10. Obviously, they still brought on Albonoz late in the game, and he was able to shift out into the outside backs. Was Carreras, but yeah, man, he kicked his goals. He set up plays. Kick from hand, so yeah, controlled the game pretty well down in Wellington, you'd have to say. Chocobates and Cinti also really impressive in the midfield. Chocobates made a heap of tackles last week. Moroni continues on the right wing. Remember, he's able to shift into the midfield. We saw it late in the game last week. And Mateo Carreras, with that ankle-breaking steps of his, continues on the left. And then Malia, who also looked pretty steadfast and in control at the back last week, continues on at fullback. Replacements, Ruiz already mentioned. Vivas and Sclavi continue on as the two prop replacements. Molina drops to the bench. Lavanini still there. Bazan Velez, who didn't get any game time last week, they stayed with Bertrano for the whole 80. Continues on as the halfback replacement. Albonoz there as well, who will likely come on at 10 if they decide to shift Santiago Carreras either to the bench or somewhere else in the back line. And then Delgui comes into the side for this one. So it's a 5-3 split rather than 6-2 for the Pumas, with Delgui likely to fill one of those spots on the wing. Promised you some stats. The All Black stats, sadly, have some kind of ugly reading. Like, in terms of the meters per carry, which is the thing I bloody obsess over in terms of how effective is a team on the ball carrier to get forward, because you need to get forward to get tries in most cases. The All Blacks average was 2.3 meters per carry last week, which was the lowest I've seen since actually game 1 against England under Razor, but also that record loss to South Africa last year before the World Cup at that new at Twickenham. So bad. And 286 run meters total. It's the lowest number I can find for the ABs in recent memory. I looked back at the 2023, 2022, 2021 stats, all these games under Fozzie. Couldn't find any games where the All Blacks had less than 300 run meters. There was a couple of times where Ireland and South Africa limited the All Blacks to like low 300s, but nothing below 300. 286 meters. That's at home as well. So really, really struggling to get over that advantage line. Yeah, very, very kind of troubling. If you look at the forwards, excluding Adi Savia, all of the New Zealand forwards had a combined total of 68 run meters and 1 tackle broken. That's kind of atrocious. Like, Adi had 51 meters and 4 defenders beaten. Not even his best game. But you'd think the other guys could do a little bit more than what we saw there. It was, less than the most effective ball carrying from the ABs, but a heck of a lot of credit has to go to the Argentinian defenders. I mean, goodness me. Gajo, the prop, 18 tackles. Rubiolo, the lock, 18 tackles. Crema, the Lucy, 19 tackles. Chocobates in the back line, I think they had 16. So these guys tackled the house down. You think they'll have to do it again if they're going to be in for a chance at Eden Park. But man, they played smart rugby. They only offloaded twice. They kept it kind of pretty tight, the Pumas. They only mauled it twice as well. One of those mauls got some really good kind of pay. It got some good maul meters, not run meters. It got kind of trucking up the field. But key points, man, they won 7 turnovers. they put the All Blacks under pressure at the breakdown, which for a while now, not just under the Razor era, has been an area of concern for the All Blacks. To kind of lacking that clinical edge at the breakdown. And that was the most of any Rugby Championship side at the weekend. Like more than the Aussies, more than the Box, more than the All Blacks. 7 turnovers. Really, really impressive from the Argentinians. Last week was an 8-point game, but that wasn't Eden Park. That was Wellington, like I said. The last time these two sides played at Eden Park, and I'm pretty sure it's the only time they've played at Eden Park, was the Rugby World Cup 2011, which was 33 points to 10. There were two guys who are familiar, who played in that game, who are still knocking about. One of them is Augustine Creevy, but sadly he's not playing this one. It's a chance for him to go back to Eden Park and right some wrongs, but no. And then Felipe Contepomi played at 12 for that one. He is now the coach for the Pumas, so none of the guys who played in that game will be taking the field, sadly. It is at Eden Park. It's a 7:05 kickoff, so kind of usual standard kickoff time for those of us here in NZ. And Andrea Piatti, the Italian, is the referee for this one. It's his Rugby Championship debut. So, big game for that guy. Imagine being the ref. If the All Blacks are under some pressure and it's a tight game at the end, is he going to be able to blow that whistle to potentially give the Pumas a penalty? In theory, easy call, right? Should be yes, but referees are human too. And this, if it's a close game, that's a heck of a lot of pressure on that guy. But he's certainly been there and done it before. He's been in the Six Nations. He recently refereed, I think it was Japan against, was it Japan, Georgia, or Japan, Italy? He refereed one of the games over in Japan. So, certainly one of the guys who's been there or thereabouts on the refereeing scene in recent times. Predictions: All Blacks by 14, say the bookies. And All Blacks by 20, says the Rugby Forecast algorithm. The All Blacks tend to do better at Eden Park. If you guys are in the States and you want to watch this game and the other games of the Rugby Championship, it is on Flow Rugby. I'll put a link down in the description to Flow. They're an affiliate of the channel. Check out Flow Rugby for all your Rugby Championship live games and replays. You guys let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. Subscribe to the channel, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Take care of yourselves, folks, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.